Hey, welcome to the Cutlass Board Games channel. I am Keith Franks, the main guy that makes stuff on this channel. And today I wanted to do a little bit of a devlog because I've been making a lot of Marvel Snap content recently. I've been streaming a lot of Marvel Snap, and also I've made a couple of other little videos on the side, like where I make custom cards for the game. And I wanted to do a little bit of a devlog today about why I make some of this kind of content. Because like aside from designing board games, I'm also playing Magic Arena, Marvel Snap, Teamfight Tactics, and Pokemon competitively. A lot of this is sometimes on camera, sometimes not on camera. I know I haven't really done any arena content since ATGN shut down, but I'm still pretty current with that on the side. And a lot of this stuff feels like I'm doing it both to get inspiration for new ideas and stuff like that. But I'm also playing a lot of new games as well. Like Wingspan was a big one for me that I played and was like, wow, this is a whole bunch of new things that I need to figure out how I can learn from, right? But in playing these competitive games and like Magic the Gathering was a cornerstone for me. That was kind of where I came from, how I started out getting into board games a bit more seriously. And in designing stuff, when I look at my ideas and how they fit together and stuff like that, a lot of that muscle for seeing how different components interact comes from games like Magic the Gathering, like Marvel Snap, when you see how the components fit together in such a way that it's used for its maximum potential. Like a really easy example is in Magic the Gathering. There's 2-card infinite combos where the way that you sequence the different effects allows it to loop indefinitely, and a lot of the times discovering these effects win you the game on the spot. Kiki-Jiki the Mirror Breaker and Restoration Angel was really big when I was playing in stores. And that particular combo meant that you would create infinite creatures, infinite copies of Restoration Angel, and then you could then attack for an infinite number, right? Which basically meant that you win the game. And then in discovering that such a concept exists, you go, okay, what other possible combinations of 2 cards can I find? Is there ones that work better for me? Is there ones in a better range of colors? For me, like for example, as well as Conscripts does the same thing that Restoration Angel does, but it's in the same color as Kiki-Jiki. So as a deck builder, you're suddenly like, okay, now I don't need to be in 2 colors, I can be in 1 color. And that same thought process exists in a lot of games. Is there a way that I can streamline this? Like, do I need to have 2 different things available to the player? And you're trying to kind of reverse engineer that same thought process, right? In a way that it means that the content that you're creating builds something for the player to explore and find that like broken combo or that strong synergy, so that there's that rewarding payoff when they do find something and do play something. And sometimes it's broken and it makes the game not fun. And sometimes it is fun, but then you have to balance with how powerful it is, with how often it can come up and stuff like that. And these are things that I'm thinking about a lot when I'm putting things together, when I'm building stuff. And that synergy that players are looking for is a type of fun for a specific kind of player, like the more competitive mindset of the player. And it's easier for me to be able to build that in when I have the experience and keeping those skills sharp. Like if I just played Crokinole for 70 hours a day, like I would like to, because that game is fantastic, then maybe I wouldn't be up to date. I wouldn't be seeing the new things that's going on in Magic the Gathering or Marvel Snap, which has been blowing up recently, and I've been really enjoying playing. But in a lot of those things, when you're playing stuff, and a lot of the community outcry when new cards come out or new sets come out, something happens, we go, oh, this is broken, oh no, this needs a nerf, and you're like, okay, does it really need a nerf, right? And then that same part of the brain that you're using to go, hey, is this fun broken? can also do QA stuff where you go, is this really bad? Like, what could we do to fix this? All this kind of stuff. A lot of the times it's just mathematical balance. Can we make it show up less so that the problem thing happens less often? Or can we make it so that the severity of the problem is less strong? Like, for example, at the moment, Silver Surfer just came out in Marvel Snap. Everyone's like, this card's really broken. And it's like, okay, sure. It's currently the number one ranked deck according to Marvel Snap Zone, I think is the thing. And basically what it does is all of your things that cost 3 will get +3. And you can do that extra time into the Wong. You can get as many things that cost 3 onto the locations that you can. And then an option for a way to make it feel less powerful would be to make it give +2 to things instead of +3 to things, or make it cost 4 or something like that, so that it becomes less abusable, or it becomes more difficult to take advantage of it in the same way. Like, if it cost 6 and it had 6 power on it and it did the same thing, it would mean that you could play one less extra 3-cost thing on the final turn. But if you have Sarah, and the difference, right, it doesn't change it. Whereas Sarah says you can play 3 things, the last one being Silver Surfer, and without her you play 2 things because they would both cost 3. But if Silver Surfer costs 6, when he comes in, he boosts all your other 3 costs. You're unable to play extra 3 costs on the final turn, which makes him mostly useless, probably. If you make him cost 4, then you might need Sarah just to play 2 on the final turn, and all this kind of stuff. But then Mr. Negative says he costs 0, adds 3 power, and gives all your other 3 cost things a lot of power, which is kind of crazy in itself, right? So you have to try and figure out in what way can we balance things. Marvel Snap is a good example, because in it exists a lot of cards that cost a lot and have no power as a offset for how strong the ability is, right? And then Mr. Negative says you invert the cost and the power. So all of a sudden it has a lot of power and no cost and a really powerful ability. And you're like, okay, which of these 2 things can I balance, right? Like, the answer is probably to change how Mr. Negative works. More so than Silver Surfer, but these are the kind of things that you have to think about when you're releasing something. For example, Castles of Kalira, in the first set, there's too many things that reveal stuff. And for new players that aren't familiar with the high-level strategy of the game, haven't played a lot of games for it, end up with a game state where on the final turn, every single card is face up, and the Princess Spire gets destroyed. And so basically, you're playing around using a marketplace to give the Princess Spire to the other player, and the player who goes second is able to just play it face down for 1 point and doesn't really have any other options, which can be rough. And if you're not mindful of this scenario and making choices around things during the game, like, you can intentionally not reveal stuff, you can keep things face down, you can use your watchtowers ineffectively, and so on, and mitigate this problem as a player through experience and understanding how these scenarios work. Or in Season 2, knowing that this was a problem, one of the things that we adjusted was -1 watchtower, which means that if every single card's ability is activated, 2 less cards would be revealed, and 1 less trebuchet. So there's 1 less card that you have to worry about to destroy the Princess Spire. But then we add the Forge, which means that the Forge could be either one of these 2 things, because it copies the effect of another card. So it means that the balance isn't super different, but the availability of these things is different. And we found that developed a much smoother gameplay experience when we were able to add other cards in there that fit in nicely amongst that. And that's something that came from learning and balancing and flexing those muscles in QA, in breaking combos, in seeing just how much availability of the meta that there is. Like, for example, in Hearthstone, some of the most powerful cards, you can only have 1 copy of it in your deck. Whereas in Magic the Gathering, it doesn't have that same limitation, but you're only able to have one copy in play of named cards, legendary cards. So it's like a different approach to the same problem. Whereas in Marvel Snap, you have one copy of every card. You don't get double ups unless if you use something like a Moon Girl, and that in itself means that any overpowered card must be drawn and can only apply its overpowered effect one time. And so something like Castles of Cthulhu is the same, where it's like banquet halls might be broken, and if it is broken, there is exactly one of them, and how far between the beginning and the end of the game that it is played determines just how strong it can be. Same as the Princess Spire, same as pretty much every other card. And these are all considerations that you have to make when you're putting something together to build a game. That's pretty much all I wanted to put in. I want to start trying to do more devlog content to run alongside the different podcast stuff that I do, because I have tried to get a bit more podcast stuff happening more regularly. And yeah, if you're keen on hearing a bit more stuff about designing games, chirp up in the comments, let us know, and hit that like button, because my self-esteem is directly tied to that like button ratio. And hit that subscribe button, because that also makes me feel nice and good. But yeah, I'll see you next one. Watch one of these videos over here. Watch this one. Click there.